Hello, thank you all for joining us today. We have a really great webinar about energy benchmarking here in Chula Vista. But before we start, just wanted to let everyone know that the session is being recorded. So if you miss it or someone that you know is interested but hasn't seen it, won't be able to see it, please visit the chulavistaca.gov/clean website for webinars that have been recorded. Please ask any Q&As in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And we'll address the questions at the various points of the session or at the end of the session, depending on how much time we have. So thank you very much for being here today, and again, ask any questions at the bottom. There is 2 more webinars that are coming up in next month in September. One on recycling. Are you wish cycling or really recycling? I know that's something that I still struggle with a lot, and what is the best, or how to recycle and care for the materials that we're using, as well as on later in September, the Chula Vista Zero Waste Plan, which is something our staff have been working on for a while, and we're really excited to share to the public. So that'll be a great presentation. In addition, there will be, as I mentioned before, all the previous webinars, including this one, will be on the Clean website. There's some really great topics from electrifying your home, stormwater, composting, and some other really great programs that are going on in the Chula Vista right now. So if you're interested or know someone who is, definitely encourage you to visit the chulavistaca.gov/clean website. And there'll be opportunities, like I said, to learn about all these subjects there. If you do have any questions, please type them in the question box that should be at the bottom of your screen. And when we have time, we'll pose those to the panelists. Thank you very much. And so without further ado, I will turn it over to Barbara Loci, Sustainability Specialist in the Office of Sustainability that helps businesses with sustainability. Thank you much.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for attending. Next slide, please. So the Chula Vista Energy Benchmarking Ordinance was approved by City Council in March of 2021, so this year, and will begin taking effect for commercial and multifamily buildings 20,000 square feet and above in 2022, reporting 2021 energy data. This work has been done by staff to adhere with the city's climate action plan, which was updated in 2017 and calls for a retrofit of 20% of multifamily and commercial spaces by 2035, so that they can achieve 50% in energy savings and consequently, of course, also financial savings. Next slide, please. Building performance ordinances are designed to facilitate this process by putting the right information in the hands of owners and tenants so that they can optimize their decisions related to building energy efficiency. Based on an EPA study from 2011, just by benchmarking their energy consumption, buildings save 2 to 3% energy annually. Tracking progress is very helpful, and disclosing publicly holds a building owner accountable and responsible for the value added to their building by improving its efficiency. So basically, measurement and transparency equals energy efficiency. Next slide, please. Benchmarking ordinances are valuable because they empower the owner to pay attention and make changes to a building's needs. But building performance ordinances go above and beyond by requiring low-performing buildings to also conduct audits and eventually apply the findings by making changes to the building, optimizing its efficiency. So once a building is benchmarking and is showing signs of struggle with energy efficiency, then they can choose voluntarily or be required by an ordinance to conduct energy efficiency audits, and then subsequently retrocommissioning and show that they are actually acting on their inefficiencies. Next slide, please. So early benchmarking ordinances have been in place for about 15 years now. More and more cities are adopting or strengthening their ordinances. In Chula Vista, we looked extensively at these policies that you see on the map here of the United States. We compared the requirements, talked to program staff in other cities, and asked them tough questions, including what works and what doesn't work, lessons learned, and what they wish they had done differently. So we came up with our ordinance. The orange dots indicate benchmarking only policies, and purple includes performance standards and audits. And of course, as you can see, Chula Vista has a purple dot. Next slide, please. So here is our ordinance requirement as a summary. All buildings 20,000 square feet and above must benchmark their consumption using Energy Star Portfolio Manager. The state of California already requires buildings 50,000 square feet and above to benchmark and report. If the building is underperforming by Chula Vista requirements, it will be required to go through an audit after 5 years and implement the findings after another 5 years. Improvements must meet, of course, a simple return on investment and make sense financially. We're not going to put a burden on these buildings. We just want them to save money by saving energy. We don't want to punish them. And so we're proud to say that even the staff at the California Energy Commission is calling our ordinance cutting edge in the state because of these requirements. Next slide, please. Multifamily buildings will have to comply with the ordinance, but there are differences between their common areas versus the tenant spaces, which will have to comply with our single-family ordinance. While the common areas will have to comply with the requirements of the energy benchmarking ordinance. So the common areas will be treated more as a commercial space and the tenant space more of a residential space. Next slide, please. So this slide compares several building performance ordinances in more detail compared to Chula Vista's policy at the bottom. As you can see, ours is one of the most stringent, and I'll give you a minute to look at this before I go to the next slide. Next slide, please. So here are the ordinance requirements. All buildings above 20,000 square feet have to comply and report to the city annually starting in 2020, reporting, of course, 2021 data. All must disclose publicly and to tenants annually. Those buildings that are underperforming and not showing improvement must conduct an ASHRAE Level 1 audit after 5 years. And after 10 years, these buildings must implement the measures identified in the audit. The dates that you see, for example, for the improvement on the right, every 10 years, beginning in 2028, 2032, and also for the audit every 5 years, beginning 23 through 28. Those dates may be misleading, but the reality is that some buildings started benchmarking already, let's say in 2018 when it was required by the state for the 50,000 and above. So those buildings already have energy data. And so they will be required to comply earlier if their energy score is below 80 points on the Energy Star scale. So if you own or manage a building in Chula Vista that will be affected by this ordinance, we ask you to please contact us. We can help you through the steps and comply, and we are available to answer any question that you may have. Next slide, please. This is our contact information. So like I said, feel free to contact us if you have any questions, if you want to learn more about it. And we also have a website website, on our city's website. We have a web page, sorry, that you can visit as well. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Barbara. That's a really great information and great to see how, even amongst a policy that other jurisdictions have enacted, Chula Vista is still able to kind of lead a little bit and bring some more innovation to our to businesses down in Chula Vista. Now we're going to turn it over to two speakers from the EPA. Kathy Hutchinson, Katie Hatcher is the EPA Energy Star Public Sector National Manager and works with states and local governments to help advance energy efficiency and decarbonization of commercial buildings through the use of Energy Star tools and resources. And Anthony Albino, an associate at the Cadmus Group, has worked as a support contractor for the EPA Energy Star program since 2013.
Great, thank you, Corey. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of Energy Star and talk a little bit about the Energy Star scale that Barbara mentioned, and then I'm going to turn it over to Anthony to provide a demonstration of how building owners can benchmark their properties in Portfolio Manager and report information to Chula Vista for their ordinance. Next slide, please. So Energy Star has been around for about 30 years, and for many of those years, we have provided a tool called Portfolio Manager that's available for use by anyone, free. It's a federal EPA resource, and it's for benchmarking commercial buildings. And to date, we've got about 275,000 properties that are benchmarking, which represents about 25% of all the commercial floor space in the United States. And as Barbara mentioned, many local governments in a few states have mandated the use of this voluntarily available tool. So they've mandated the use of it for benchmarking purposes and building performance standards. So the private sector in those jurisdictions uses the tool as the reporting pathway for these ordinances. Next slide, please. So a little bit about Portfolio Manager before you see the demonstration. So it's a management tool that was designed originally for building owners to take in a little bit of information about the property in terms of energy use information, square footage, and a few other types of operating characteristics that change by space type, and to turn that data into usable metrics and information to help understand investment opportunities for energy efficiency purposes in order to eliminate cost-effective energy waste. So the notion here is instead of paying for energy you really don't need to use to the utility, you want to invest in energy efficient technologies and practices in the property. So you're investing in your building, you're reducing your energy use, which also reduces greenhouse gas emissions. So the tool has aspects of it that allows you to track greenhouse gas emissions, and it also has other features that are helpful, like it is used for tracking water, and you can track waste and recycling information as well. But Portfolio Manager is the pathway to apply for the Energy Star certification. And Energy Star certification is based on the Energy Star scale that Barbara mentioned. Next slide, please. So, sorry, I'll just stop and mention that this is just a representation of the many metrics that are in Portfolio Manager that can be used to help manage your environmental performance of properties. Next slide, please. So many years ago, EPA determined that it was very difficult for building owners to understand the relative performance. So we created the Energy Star scale that is by space type for different properties. And buildings that score a 75 or higher are eligible to earn the Energy Star. However, the scale itself is just useful, even if building owners don't proceed for certification, to understand relative performance comparing their building to other similar buildings across the country. Next slide, please. So the Energy Star scale is based on random unbiased survey samples by space type of buildings across the nation. And so then what we then do is we create a scale that adjusts for various things. Next slide, please. And you can see some of them here, right? So what we've done is we've created some normalization features to normalize for things that are relevant drivers of energy use for specific space types. So the end result is a scale by space type for a building owner to then compare their property to other similar properties across the country. Next slide, please. And as you can see here, this is the a listing of the different space types where there is an Energy Star score available. And the underlying survey samples are typically from the EIA's Commercial Building Energy Consumption Survey, but some are actually based on some other independent surveys that have been done. Next slide, please. And so we do have many forms of recognition through the Energy Star program. And so, as I mentioned, Energy Star is a voluntary program that encourages building owners and businesses to eliminate their cost-effective energy waste and then be rewarded through recognition for those achievements. And so on our website, which is energystar.gov, there's more information about these types of recognition and a whole host of tools and resources that we have. Next slide, please. We also have very robust training that's either self-service or live training and many guides to help with the benchmarking process. And I'm sure Chula Vista will be linking to our resources in addition to creating some of their own to help assist you with the benchmarking process. So now I'm going to turn it over to Anthony for the demonstration.
Great, thanks, Katie. I'm just going to go ahead and pull up my screen share here. Okay, excellent. So thanks everyone for joining today. As Corey mentioned, my name is Anthony Albano. I'm an associate at the Cadmus Group working in support of EPA's Energy Star program. For today's demo, I'm going to walk through and provide an overview of Portfolio Manager and demonstrate the process of how to benchmark a commercial office building and then report that benchmarked data to the city of Chula Vista. So from a high level, benchmarking is really a three-step process. First is to add a property, then add a meter to that property, and ultimately add energy consumption to that meter and thus that property. So the first step here is really to log in to Portfolio Manager, and you can do so by navigating to energystar.gov/benchmark. And that brings you to this page here. On the right-hand side, if you scroll down, you can see my login information is already plugged in. So if you have an account, you can simply enter the information here and log in. If you don't yet have an account, you can simply create one, and it only takes just a couple minutes entering some basic information here. So I already have an account, and if I were to click this login button, it would essentially bring me to this landing page that I'm showing here. And before we jump in, I just want to kind of give a lay of the land for some of the different content that you see on the screen. So starting in the top right-hand corner, you'll see account settings. So this is where you can adjust your contact info, change your password, set up some web services for connection to the utilities. You also have notifications. This is where you'll see sharing requests from other Portfolio Manager accounts. Then is Energy Star notifications. And these are updates from Energy Star, such as score changes or other Portfolio Manager-wide updates, as well as some additional information about utilities and potential connections. And then you have contacts. So this is where you can add or delete contacts within Portfolio Manager. And I will mention you need to add different contacts or different accounts as contacts before you can submit sharing requests to other accounts. And it kind of works as a social media friend request where one account sends a request to another, and then that person needs to go in to their Portfolio Manager account and accept the request. And then last but not least is our help tab. Just a plethora of resources here from FAQs to a glossary of terms to a help desk, as well as links to live and pre-recorded trainings. This is a really great place to go if you have any questions or you're looking for Portfolio Manager support. And then we have this additional row of tabs here. So my portfolio, this is sort of your dashboard of properties. You can see that I have 60 properties here that are aggregated in a few different groups. You also have the sharing tab. So this is where you can share properties with other portfolio manager accounts, of course, once you've added them as a contact. There's also the reporting tab. So this shows a list of various reports and templates, and this is also the tab that you'll use to respond to data requests, which is the process of sharing your data with Chula Vista. And then you have the recognition tab. That's for various building types and showing past certification applications. And one other helpful tool that I wanted to show was the data collection worksheet. And what this is essentially a helpful tool that you can use to determine what information is required to benchmark. So you can first select your country, which would be US, and then property type, let's say K-12 school. I can click look up required data, and it gives me the information that I would need to benchmark a K-12 school in Portfolio Manager. So this is a great place to start your benchmarking journey. Okay, I'm going to navigate back to Portfolio Manager. And we're going to walk through the 3-step process of benchmarking a property. And again, that first step is to add a property. Second step is to add a meter. And then third step is to add energy consumption to that meter. So starting at step 1, I'm going to click Add a Property under the My Portfolio tab. So here we need to first determine what kind of property we're going to benchmark. For this demonstration, we're going to choose an office. And this will be a single building. And this is also going to be a test property. It's worth mentioning that this functionality that you'll see on this demonstration would be identical to if we selected existing property, but this is just going to be a demonstration, so I wanted to select a test property. And we can go ahead and get started. So here brings us to basic information about this property, and we can go ahead and enter in some information, the name of our building, go with CV test property, and United States, 123 Main Street. This will be in Chula Vista. In California. And let's say 1977 perhaps. And gross floor area, we'll go with 216,000 feet. Of course, this would all be specific to your building use case. And then irrigated area, you can enter 0 here unless you plan to use a separate outdoor water meter. For today's demo, we're not going to benchmark water, and neither is it required for the Chula Vista ordinance. Occupancy, this typically doesn't impact the Energy Star score unless it's below 90%, but you do want to use an accurate representation here. We can assume 90% for this test property. There is a functionality to enter in standard IDs if you have them, and in that case, you would enter them here. And then the last step for this process, or this initial process, is to determine if any of these apply. So such as benchmarking parking areas, data centers, retail stores, or restaurants. For the purpose of this demo, we can assume that none of those apply, and we can click Continue. And here we are brought to the building use information. So you can see the basic information that we entered on the previous page. If you needed to make edits, you could do so here. So here is where we need to enter some more building use information. You can see we still have this 216,000 square feet that we entered on the previous section. The next is to enter weekly operating hours. And we're going to go with 65. Number of workers on main shift. We're going to go with 390, and we'll give them each a computer. As far as percent that can be heated, we're going to say less than 50%, and percent that can be cooled more than 50%. Again, this would be specific to your building that you're looking to benchmark. Also want to call out these stars on the left-hand side. So you can see that those use details indicate that that's a metric used to calculate the 1 to 100 Energy Star score. And also I wanted to mention that it's not really a best practice to use defaults or temporary values here, as that will preclude you from earning an Energy Star score or certification. So it's really best practice to enter actual values here. And then one other thing I wanted to call out is Portfolio Manager has this functionality where if you hover over these blue terms, the glossary definition pops up. So this is really helpful as you go along. You can kind of get a sense for the different terms used. And let's go ahead and add this property. So just like that, step 1 is complete. You'll get this green notification box on the top of your screen. Congrats, you've successfully created your property. Next, you can add energy use information. So that's a great recommendation. We'll go ahead and add energy use information, but just wanted to show a couple of things here on this property specific page. So again, this is our CV test property. And we have a new kind of set of tabs here. So the first summary tab, this is the landing page for this particular property. This will eventually show your Energy Star score or some high level metrics up here in the right-hand side. We also have other information about the various baseline and energy current. This is also where you have the option to use the data quality checker, which is a really powerful tool. I highly recommend using this. Let's navigate over to the details tab. So this is various property use details that we entered on the previous couple of pages. If you need to make edits, you can go ahead and do so here. Then we have the energy tab. This is where you can add an energy meter. We'll come back here in just a minute. Same for water. You can add a water meter or waste and materials as well. You also have the option to set goals and targets for this particular property. And then lastly, the design tab, that's if you're looking to design a building that's not yet created. And so we can go ahead and skip that piece for today's demo. Okay, let's navigate back to the energy tab and go ahead and add a meter for this property. So for the purpose of this demo, we're going to go ahead and add one electric meter purchased from the grid, as well as one natural gas meter. We can go ahead and click Get Started. So this brings us to your About Your Meter page, where you can edit the details by clicking directly into the field. And so some folks like to enter their meter number next to the natural gas meter. So perhaps you could enter it to align with your utility bills. This is particularly helpful if you have a lot of different meters. Just helps you stay organized. It's going to type in some dummy information here. So let's look at the natural gas meter. Other type, we don't need to enter anything here. Units, we're going to be benchmarking these in kBTU. And then we need to determine the date the meter became active. So this is also synonymous with the first day of the utility bills that you'll be entering. So for today, we're going to benchmark 2020 calendar year, and we're going to assume that our energy bills started on January 1st, 2020. But in all reality, utility bills typically don't start on the first of the month. So you want to make sure that whatever that first day on your utility bill is also the first day that the meter became active. And you can see here there's an option to select a date for the date the meter became inactive, but we're going to assume that this meter is still active, it's current, and we don't need to enter any information here. And then similar for the electric grid meter, we already kind of added that custom name here, and we need to determine the units, which would be kWh. And we're going to assume that this meter also started on January 1st, 2020. And let's go ahead and create those two meters. So you get this green notification box up here on the top. Your meters have been created, and just like that, we've completed step 2. So at this point, we've now created this property. We've added 2 meters to this property, and our next step is to complete those meters by adding energy or utility bills to those meters. So you can see here, there's 2 different meters. There's the natural gas meter and the electric meter. And the first one up is natural gas. So what you could do is you could go ahead and click right in here, add a manual entry, and you could benchmark this 1 month at a time, essentially. But it's a little bit more speedy to actually go ahead, let me just clear this out, and use a single meter spreadsheet upload. So what I'm going to do is download this, and this comes in the form of an Excel spreadsheet, and it's just loading up on my other screen. And so this is what the blank spreadsheet looks like, just to give you a sense. And so you can see that there's 3, 4 required fields and 1 optional for cost. So I've already gone ahead and pre-populated this data in another spreadsheet. I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. And so you can see this is what it looks like for 1 year worth of data. So I'm going to put this back over here. And since I've already saved and populated that spreadsheet and it's saved on my desktop, I can go ahead and choose that file. And you can see here the name populated. It's called CV Natural Gas Meter. I'm gonna go ahead and click Upload. And the information is populated on our screen here. So if that all looks good, we can then go ahead and move on to the electric meter. And you got to click this caret here to expand. So we could, of course, use that same process because I also have a populated electric meter spreadsheet saved on my desktop, but I want to show another way to upload this data as well. So here is my pre-populated spreadsheet for electric data. And you'll see that these are very similar in format, but it's a little bit different. So I want to also call out that you can only use the spreadsheet upload for the specific meter type. So you can't use a natural gas spreadsheet to upload electricity data or propane data, et cetera. And you can download the specific, you can download those specific spreadsheets in the section under the particular utility bill you're looking at. So again, I've got this pre-populated data. And I'm going to go ahead and copy it. You grab everything except for the headers. So I've copied. I'm going to click in as if I was adding a manual entry and simply click paste. And there we go. It's populated our electric grid meter. This gives you another chance to quickly just look at it and make sure there's no, glaring issues. And if it looks okay, we can click continue. And there we go. Your meter entries have been added to your meters. The next step is to determine if these 2 meters account for all the energy consumption at this particular property. And if it doesn't, you can use these buttons here to toggle and you can see the total meter count changes. So we're going to assume that these 2 meters account for all the energy consumption at this test property. Go ahead and apply those selections. And there we go. We now have a benchmarked property in Portfolio Manager. You can see it's earning a score of 35 here, so certainly a little bit of room for improvement. But the first step really is to measure the data first and then manage it after. So the slogan goes, you can't manage what you don't measure. So I'm going to go back to the details and summary tab, and you can see there's more information populated here. As opposed to earlier when it was all blank. And let's say that you didn't actually want to see the Energy Star score up here, and let's say maybe site energy use intensity was more important. You could select that metric, and then it's your populating up here. So essentially that property is now benchmarked. You can see there's the Portfolio Manager ID number for this property is right here. Some other information about occupancy and square footage that can be edited using the functionality here. And then one other thing I wanted to mention was there's also the option to add property notes here. So you could say test notes, for example, and go ahead and save it. Portfolio Manager is really good about providing this green feedback box at the top to let you know the action you're trying to accomplish has been completed. One other thing, I did mention the data quality checker. So this is a great way to check for possible errors once you've benchmarked your data and before you submit it to the city. And let's say you've ran that data quality checker, you've reviewed your data, everything looks good, and you're ready to respond to the Chula Vista data request. What will essentially happen is the city will provide a clickable URL that you can go ahead and click on, and it'll be prompted to open Portfolio Manager. And at that point, you can review the instructions in the data request and then respond with your properties in question. So we do have a sample data request here that I'm going to type in here. And so this will be kind of what you see when you click on that data request. So this is prompting us to respond to this data request from Chula Vista for 2020 data. Of course, as discussed earlier, the 2022 reporting cycle will be requiring 2021 calendar year data. So you can see that this data request has been provided from Chula Vista. There's also some instructions here about the ordinance, etc. And there's a section for help and contact information. And then here comes our response piece. So who's submitting this? This is, of course, I'm going to be submitting as myself. And then you can see that the time frame is locked here because this has been determined by the city of Chula Vista. But what we can do is select the properties that we wish to have respond. So I'm just going to respond with one property. But if you had multiple, you could certainly select multiple, or you could respond to all properties in a group. But I just have one property in this case. And I'm going to find my CV test property right here. And what I'm going to do is generate a response preview. So it's worth noting that just because I generated that response preview, it does not mean that I responded to the data request. So you can see this is the data request, Chula Vista 2020 request, and you can see my response preview has been generated. So let's go ahead and preview that response. And a little bit tough to see in that format, so let's take a look as an Excel download. Download preview in Excel. And you can see here, this is a preview of the response that you will be sending to Chula Vista. You can see the different fields that are being requested and populated. Gross floor area, the different types of properties that you're responding with, the number of buildings, the year built, our occupancy, even the notes that we have entered here. So this is helpful to take a look, make sure everything looks good before you submit your response. So let's say you previewed that response, it looks good. The next step is to go ahead and send response. So this is just essentially the confirmation page. Who besides yourself should be sending the confirmation email to? Let's say you want your boss to know that you submitted this response. You could essentially add them as a CC field here. Or add additional email addresses here. So we can leave the response in Excel format. And then at this point, we just need to essentially e-sign the data. So I'm going to click this, that I certify that I'm releasing data about my properties to Chula Vista. And then you'll be prompted to enter username and password and then e-sign the response. You can see there's now a green check mark here that has been signed. And the last step is to send the data. And again, we see this green notification box. Your response to the data request from the benchmark Chula Vista has been successfully sent. You'll receive a confirmation email with a receipt and a copy of the data attached shortly. So this typically takes a couple minutes to come through. So what I did is I saved another example. Here's an example. This is about a year ago, actually, now at this point, but you can see that the response was sent in 2020, again, for a separate data request, but it's just showing kind of the format of what you see as your confirmation email. And I'd say give this a couple minutes. If you don't see it come through, you might want to check your spam or junk folders. So that concludes the live demonstration portion. You now know how to add a property in Portfolio Manager, add meters to that property, and then populate those meters with utility data, and then ultimately review your data and submit it to the city of Chula Vista. Corey, I'll go ahead and pass it back to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That's a great great overview of walkthrough of the tool that's been really useful to a lot of jurisdictions and helping them better understand and track the energy consumption in their communities. Now we'll be hearing from Robert, who is a local green building consultant who specializes in LEED certification and green building education. And we have received some questions, so we'll be we'll be following up on those at the end of the presentation. If you have any more, feel free to enter them in the Q&A box at the bottom. Over to you, Rob.
Okay, thank you, Corey, for that introduction. As Corey said, my name is Robert Carr, and I was the lead AP on lead certifying the 786 3rd LLC property that resides in Chula Vista. It's an outpatient doctor's office, and it was certified LEED Gold as of July. Next slide, please. So a couple things about the building. It's an outpatient doctor's office. It's about 3,800 square feet, which unfortunately doesn't make it eligible for Energy Star score. But as you'll see in the screenshots, you still get an EUI and kind of comparison to like spaces. So that is very powerful. It was remodeled in 2012. And so during that remodel, they did many energy efficiency upgrades. And they also installed a 21 kW PV array, which you may have noticed in the opening slide there for this presentation. And like I said, it was LEED certified gold in 2021. And one of the things that's required for LEED certification is to complete an ASHRAE level 1 audit, which requires that building be specifically benchmarked to other buildings. And we use Energy Star Portfolio Manager for that. Next slide, please. So in 2012, like I said, they installed a 21 kW array, and they also installed, even though it's not listed here, these solo tubes, which, if you're not familiar with the technology, allow natural light to be fed into the buildings using a series of mirrors, and it really illuminates the space with natural light. And so each exam room has one of these. The solar array is off to the right of this picture. They replaced most of their incandescent lighting with LEDs that time, installed smart programmable thermostats, which can be programmed using the Internet of Things. And then really cool, they had these flick light switches, which turn color based on the carbon intensity of the grid. So if the light is green, that means that there's lots of renewables on the grid and kind of use energy as you see fit. Then it turns to an orange or yellowish color when the carbon intensity starts to increase, and then to red when the carbon intensity is the greatest, or there's a demand response thing happening on the grid that day. And so this building actually has a standard operating procedure to what equipment to use, depending on what condition the grid is as far as how much carbon is on the grid. And then during the LEED certification, one thing they had to do is that one of their oldest package units on the roof was not bringing in outdoor air like it should. So they had that replaced. They also identified there were still some old linear fluorescent T8 bulbs that they replaced with LED equivalents, and there actually is an SDG&E rebate at this time to do that. It's called through their Business Energy Solutions program, so that cost them very little to do. And like I said, all of this was found by completing an ASHRAE level 1 audit, and Barbara talked about it as well. So when we went ahead and benchmarked this, we found lots of good data. So go ahead, next slide, please. So we set up this building just like Anthony showed you, and so this is the summary page. As you can see here, its current weather normalized EUI is 67.1. I'd say 67% greater or lower than the median building, meaning that for like spaces, it's in the almost the 30th percentile of buildings, which are 70th percentile buildings. And its baseline, which is basically kind of the first set of data, you need 24 months for that, was 43.2. So you can already see they've reduced the amount of their energy use intensity by 3 points, which is pretty impressive for an overall about 7% reduction in energy usage year over year. So that's pretty impressive. And so let's go to the next slide. Just want to give us some time for some questions as well. So on this slide, what you can see is we have this building actually has 4 meters, and we entered the data just like Anthony showed you. They had the reason why there's 4 meters is that before the remodel there was 4 unique spaces which each had a meter, and so those kind of stayed over as legacy ones. And then we also have a solar meter because that PV system needs to be entered into Portfolio Manager. One thing to note that I don't think Anthony got a chance to get into was if you do have a solar meter, what Portfolio Manager wants you to do is to basically, there's a dashboard which tells you how much the solar system, the PV array actually produced in a given month. You have to figure out how much of that was offloaded to the grid and how much was consumed by the building. And so if you're an SDG&E customer, if you go to the billing detail, any positive number is in your bill is energy taken from the grid. And then this is for your net energy meeting, and then any negative numbers are how much your PV system actually offloaded to the grid. And so what you do is you take that number and subtract it from your total production, and then you get the two numbers of how much was consumed by the building and how much was offloaded. And that really allows the Energy Portfolio Manager to know how much total energy was used. So if you look at May 2020, I'm going to compare it to May 2021. In May 2020, the total building consumption was adding the PV array kBTUs, which is what they convert energy into, and they added it to the grid, and that came out to be about 11,000 kBTUs in March 2020. But in May 2021, if you add up those two numbers, it actually ends up being closer to 7,600 kBTU. So that's almost around a 4,000 kBTU decrease in energy consumption, mainly due to that new HVAC system and the new PV systems and a couple of practices they put in place. So the great thing about this Energy Star Portfolio Manager, you can see how well you're doing with other buildings, and can also see kind of how your energy efficiency products are kind of coming to fruition and really showing you energy savings and cost savings. So all we did is we just benchmarked this data like Anthony showed you. So it was really great to see. So I'm done with mine. So next slide, and I'll be happy to take any questions and let my information here for you if you need it.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Robert. It's always, like I said, good to see how these programs are applied in local businesses. And it's also great to see how businesses can take that information and turn it into cost savings, which is always very important for businesses. We have received a few questions, so I'll go ahead and run through some of those now. We got a question from one of our attendees for Anthony. First part of it as a compliment. You make it seem so easy, and it really did seem pretty easy. How long would it take for a first-time user, do you think, to register and completely set up a new 50,000 square foot office building, and then do any final data entry or data checking at the end of the year before submitting to share with Chula Vista? So what for a new user, what's the process typically like?
Sure, that's a great question. It certainly depends on the complexity of the property. A one-tenant office building is going to go a lot faster than a large multi-use commercial building. But we typically say about 1 to 2 hours to enter the information into a property, kind of review it and make sure everything looks good.
Perfect. Seems pretty for the cost savings that can be the most productive 1 hour of the year, I'd imagine. Another question for Barbara. Will the City of Chula Vista have some sort of display or dashboard illustrating buildings and their Energy Star scores or energy data, kind of like the state of California's dashboard?
Yes, we are working on it. We are working on a dashboard and also an informative page where you will be able to find links, for example, to this webinar. And the dashboard will be very similar to the state of California, where we will display, all this great information about the buildings, what each building score is, and how they compare to other buildings. And I must say, although we don't have to at the city, we will also display our own buildings. And the Chula Vista School District, the elementary school district, will also allow us to display their buildings' performance, although same thing, they're not required by our ordinance to report to us, but directly to the state.
Perfect. It's always good to lead by example, so it's great that
Yes.
we'll be including those buildings in there. It'd be interesting to kind of compare with some of the other local jurisdictions around the region and see who has the most efficient buildings. I'm sure that could become pretty competitive. Another follow-up question, probably for either Anthony or Katie. What do you think maybe the hardest part of benchmarking, or the step where the most people have the questions?
Yeah, I can take that one, and then Katie, you can jump in and add anything I miss. I'd say, inputting the data into Portfolio Manager and making sure that you don't have any gaps or overlaps between your monthly utility bills. So it's really that step of taking the utility bills and then putting it into a spreadsheet format and uploading it into Portfolio Manager. It is possible that you could, enter the wrong date, and then you have, misaligned dates where, it might cause some overlaps between one month going into the other. Or on the flip side, you could also run into the situation where you have a gap in data, which Portfolio Manager will encourage you to remedy. So I think those two things, gaps or overlaps in the data, would be my initial response there.
Yeah,
Perfect.
and I'll add that because that can be tricky for users, particularly the first time that they're benchmarking. We included something called the data quality checker, which I think Anthony mentioned in his demonstration. So if you run the data quality checker, then it'll bring up any kind of errors and issues and help guide you to how to correct them. So we recognize that for first-time users coming into the tool, that it takes a little bit of time for them to become familiar with all those features. But once they are, basically it becomes easier and faster.
Okay, perfect. And this is a question, kind of follow-up question for Barbara. If a business has some questions or gets stuck along the way, is there someone at the city they can reach out to or get some assistance from?
Yes, they can reach out either to me at blochi@chulavistaca.gov or benchmark@chulavistaca.gov. And
Perfect.
yeah, let's be mindful that these are buildings, not businesses, because buildings are leased to multiple businesses sometimes. So we're talking about buildings.
Perfect. And those were the emails you had at the end of your presentation. So
That's correct.
if anyone wants
Yes.
to watch the recording, they're there as well. So thanks for that.
Mhm.
And similar, kind of a similar question for Robert. Since you have some firsthand experience as a user of Portfolio Manager, is there any tips that you would share with attendees that are just getting started?
Sure, a few things. One is watching, presentations like this one are very helpful. I'm so glad you guys have this on YouTube so people can go back and kind of really see how Anthony went step by step. One thing that I found very helpful for me when I was starting to use Energy Star Portfolio Manager is I basically created a test property and just kind of put in my actual billing data for my house. So you just kind of get to see how all the pull down menus, and sometimes you can see when you're adding data, it can be kind of persnickety is where if your dates don't line up, it says, it kind of tells you, and you just learn how to basically what things to do and not do. Good practices for Energy Star Portfolio Manager. And if you make a mistake, it's no big deal. It's just a test property. So that I like to be more hands-on. And also, I think Energy Star Portfolio Manager, they've got a bunch of resources on their website on how to basically help with this sort of thing. So using all those things and just kind of being, try not to get us, being open-minded about the process, I think that's a good way to start.
Perfect. And then I guess it's also important to state with your the assistance that you provided to the Chula Vista dentist office that there are professional organizations and individuals that can provide assistance under contracts as well. So I know some larger businesses, will have kind of have someone take a look at their portfolio, and so that's another option if businesses or building owners can afford it.
Yeah, especially for large corporations, there's many local companies that will actually go and do this whole process for you, and then take that data and go even further and drill down on kind of some energy efficiency stuff. So yeah.
Great. Well, we're still got a few more questions, so let me try to get through those. And this one I think is for Barbara. When can building owners expect to start receiving information from the city about benchmarking requirements? Will that be via email, phone, mail?
It will be in all the above ways. So for now, mostly we have addresses of building owners. So we'll go by those addresses and send out letters and postcards by the fall. So look out for those. And for those for whom we have emails already, the ones that have already reported to us on our 2021 pilot, or the ones that have already reported to the state, we will also send emails, which of course is our preferred way also to save paper. So if any building managers or owners are listening to this, like I said earlier, please get in touch with us so that we can have your email address and phone number.
Perfect. And then the last question that we have, probably for Katie, how often is the portfolio manager updated with new features?
Well, that's a good question. So we have 2 large updates that are scheduled each year. One tends to be basically in the fall and the other in the spring. And there's announcements that go out about those changes and modifications, and we'll be sharing with Chula Vista what those modifications will be, so that way they can incorporate anything that's needed into their resources to help people understand what the change might have been. And we do actually update our Energy Star scores, the 1 to 100 scales, and those tend to be updated on about a 5-year cycle typically. Sometimes it can be a little bit longer, but those are not very frequently.
Okay, perfect. And then actually there's one additional question. As the state looks to transition towards 100% renewable electricity or 100% clean electricity, how will that affect the scores that the building owners are submitting, or will it affect the scores?
So that's a great question. So the Energy Star scale is actually based on source energy use. And it's an energy consumption scale. It's a measure of efficiency comparing your building to other buildings across the nation. It's actually not a measure of emissions. So, however, the corresponding emissions information that's calculated using eGrid factors in Portfolio Manager, as that grid gets cleaner, when you benchmark your building and you take a look at the calculated emissions information, you'll see that the emissions are going down relative to your property for your grid electricity consumption.
Perfect. That's great. Great to see, and really great to see the combining of different efforts there. So thanks for all the attendees as well as the presenters and everyone who asked a question. This was really great information and really exciting to see these programs rolled out in Chula Vista as well as other jurisdictions around the nation. And that will conclude our webinar today. Just wanted to end with a little promotion for, as we did at the beginning, the upcoming webinars under our Summer Sustainability Series. Looking again at that recycling or wish cycling, and then the zero waste plan. And I know there's some opportunities to publicly comment on that. So you'll be able to learn about the zero waste plan and then go online and provide some information about that draft plan. So it's a really good timing for that. As well as all the previous webinars. And if there's any other topics that you're interested in hearing, feel free, or please let us know. We would love to incorporate new exciting topics in future webinars. So with that, I'll say thank you very much and have a great day, everybody.